Hi everybody, welcome tonight, everyone here and online. Before we start with the panel, I'd love to welcome Dame Siobhán McDonagh MP, who's kindly going to do an introduction for us.
Thank you everybody. Good evening. It's a very happy International Women's Week to you all, and I might suggest how fabulous it is to be here today alongside so many inspirational women. Tonight's event is a combination of so many things that I love. Coming to Plough Lane with AFC Wimbledon fans is an obvious one, but I always jump at the opportunity to celebrate the women who volunteer and to make this community run so well. And I'm delighted to say that I'm here this evening with my great friend Tanya Percy, who's recently joined the board of AFC Wimbledon Women's. Thank you, Tanya. So it's fair to say that Women of Wimbledon Supporters Association, WOWSA, you can't get a more fantastic name than that, can you, is right up my street. For those who don't know me, my name's Siobhán McDonagh, and for almost 27 years, I've had the privilege and pleasure of representing the very best constituency in the universe of Mitcham and Morden as the 235th female Member of Parliament. Tonight is the first time that the women who work and volunteer across the club have been able to come together to talk about the work you all do. I have no doubt that it will inspire other women to get involved. This football club has been part of my life as long as I can remember. I have cherished childhood memories of Wimbledon match days with my dad, and particularly when he and my late sister, Margaret, had great joy at getting tickets to the famous 1988 Football Club final against Liverpool to see the crazy gang beat the Culture Club. That quote never loses its excitement. I will never forget him being dumbstruck as he saw the bus come up Wimbledon Broadway, and we went into the town hall, and later he left, and I couldn't understand why he left, but he ran into his pub, the King's Head, just at Merton Bus Garage, to show everyone in there his autograph book signed by all the players that he met at the reception. My dad came to England in 1948 from Galway. And of his proud moments he had in this country, and let me tell you, he had many, few matched his trip to Wembley to watch the Dons win the FA Cup. I'm also proud to have played a small part in the club's history. Back in 2007, at Prime Minister's Questions, I asked Tony Blair to intervene with the FA. As you know, the club had been docked 18 points for failing to complete an international transfer form for Jermaine Darlington as he moved from Cardiff. I'm proud that my question helped to reduce our fine by 15 points. Just to tell secretly the people here, when I saw Tony Blair later, he said, "What did you ask me?" He said, "I knew you wouldn't lead me astray. So when I thought I couldn't hear you, so I had to give you the best answer possible, which was, the Right Honourable Lady is absolutely right. It is a complete and utter injustice." He was then on the phone to the then Sports Minister to make sure he sorted it out. But really, I'm most proud of our club, one of England's football greatest stories, owned and run by fans. We saw 6 promotions in 13 seasons, soaring our way to League One. This is an awfully long way from the open trials on Wimbledon Common, where a team was cobbled together to face Sutton United just a few weeks later. But no one shows off the Dons spirit more than the remarkable Dons Local Action Group. expertly led by Xavier Wiggins, Cormac van der Hoven and Craig Wellstead. Volunteers have distributed hundreds of thousands of food boxes, pieces of furniture, tablets and laptops across South London. And there is rarely a week that me and my office don't call the Dons to help somebody in great distress. I mentioned my dad earlier. He believed in family, faith and community. He would have loved to work to the work of the Dons Local Action Group, as well as the AFC Wimbledon Foundation. And my sister Margaret was one of the first members of the board of that foundation. Those organisations mean that our club are the heart and soul of this community. Talking about community, that is a perfect time to bring in Hannah Kumari. Hannah is not only our host for this evening, she is also a fantastic campaign manager for diversity at the Supporters Association. Hannah will be able to introduce you to the panel of inspiring women we have here today that have contributed hugely to AFC Wimbledon. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Siobhan. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's great to see such a good crowd for the first all-female panel here at AFC Wimbledon. With International Women's Day on Friday, it felt like a really good time to bring together a group of women that hold or have held positions here at the club, and to hear from them about their challenges, inspirations, their hopes for the future. And we're also really keen to hear from you, so we'll be opening up some questions to the floor, we'll be hearing from the panellists, and hopefully we can share a really inspiring evening together. So I'm going to pass over to the panellists. We'll just go down the line, and if you could just introduce yourself and say what your role is at the club, please.
Thank you, Hannah. So my name's Jenny Scott. I'm the Chair of Trustees of the AFC Wimbledon Foundation, and I've been doing that since summer 2021.
My name is Sophia Axelson, and I'm the General Manager for AFC Wimbledon Women.
Hi, I'm Michelle Little. I have a few different hats, so I'll try and remember the various ones. I started off as Dons Trust Treasurer. For those who don't know, the Dons Trust is the majority owner of the football club. We own about 80% of the shares. We're very proudly fan-owned. I became Treasurer in 2020, and then I've gradually progressed through the ranks, and I'm now Chair of the Dons Trust Board. And also, as part of that, I sit on the Club PLC board.
Thank you. I'm Lou Carton-Kelly. I started getting involved with the Wimbledon Independent Supporters Association a very long time ago in the Selhurst days, predominantly with all the demonstrations. And then from that, we worked towards setting up the Dons Trust, and I was the first elected Dons Trust Chair. I also then became AFC Wimbledon Operations Director for a while. And since then, I don't wear any of the hats that you've got, but I do wear a cap most of the time, which you probably recognise me for, as a volunteer. And I help out quite often in the office here and with the ticketing.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here with all of you today. So I think we'll just get started and jump straight in with some questions, if that's okay. So I'm going to come to Sophia, first of all, and I just wanted to ask how you got into working in football, and have you always been a football fan?
Definitely always been a football fan. I was the firstborn, and my dad chose to just educate me from very early on about the teams that he supported and the teams that I then had to support.
Which were? You've got to share.
It's IFK Gothenburg, mainly in Sweden. Let's leave it that safe. When I first moved to London in 2015, I really wanted to get back into playing, so I started playing when I was 5. And I joined a team local to me that would just run by the players themselves. We then merged with another fan-owned club called Clapton Community FC. And it was a lot bigger, and they needed a few more hands. So I started volunteering for them, and in the end I was on the board. I was on the comms committee, the development committee, and I was also the club secretary for the women's team and the men's development team. And at the same time got a little bit bored of my day job, spending more and more time volunteering for the club, and then the job description for this job came up, and I'm like, well, if I could actually do what I love doing for a living, that would be fantastic. And 2 years later, I'm still here.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear how you went from being a volunteer to actually working full-time in football, something I've just started doing myself recently. And I think that's one of the things we're really keen to discuss today, and maybe inspire people and other women to volunteer, and how kind of fandom really can actually lead to more women working in football, which I think is something that we all want to see. Maybe you could just tell us a bit about what your role entails on a day-to-day basis.
I usually describe it as everything that is not the football pitch. So nothing that happens on a football pitch. I wish I was that good at football, but I'm not. So I stick to the kind of strategy and commercial and budgeting and social media strategy and all of those things to try and help us grow off the pitch, and I leave the on-the-pitch growth to the managers and the players, which they do really well. And whilst I'm our only full-time employee, we have a great group of volunteers and the board as well, like Tanya, and we've got the chair, David Grounds, to the crowd as well, who I have the pleasure of working with really closely.
Amazing, thanks, Sophia. So it sounds like the volunteers are really a hugely integral part of the day-to-day running of the women's team.
Hugely.
Thank you. I just realised that I forgot to say hello to the online people, which was very rude of me. I'm going to look up, which will probably look a bit weird because they're not there. But I just wanted to say hi to everyone who has joined the online stream. And if you do have any questions as we go through, there should be a way for you to put them in and we can hear those. I just wanted to come to Lou now. You were actually the founding chair of the Dons Trust in 2002, over 20 years ago. So I just would be really interested to hear a bit about your journey and how the Dons Trust has evolved since then.
Okay, well, the initial part of, I mentioned it in my introduction, was the journey was via WOWSA, the Independent Supporters Association, which most of the people in this room, I'm pretty sure, will remember, and the various campaigns that we ran. Obviously, we weren't successful. Then we set up, we went to Supporters Direct workshops at Birkbeck College, and several of the people in this room were there that day, 2 of them sitting on that table over there, and people that have still been involved with the club that were there that day. And we went back to WOWSA at our next committee meeting and said, I think we need to set up a trust, because we were always being threatened that they were going to put the club into receivership. And we thought if we've got a body, official body set up, and at the time it was an IPS, that we would be able to set up a bank account and we could be able to move and buy the club for £1. Obviously absorbing any debts that they had, which we found out subsequently were quite significant. And then we had a formal launch of the trust. Prior to that, we had lots of steering committees. We had lots of people who are still involved with the club in loads of different ways. Many of them volunteer here, some people have worked here. And then we launched at Wimbledon Theatre on the 10th of February 2002 in front of a very large audience, which was fantastic, and it snowballed from there. The trust has remained a democratic society. I think the major involvement has been we're still fan-owned, and the club's progression through the leagues, we can obviously talk about this a little bit later, but and again, you probably teaching you all to suck eggs here, but the club's progression through the leagues and to now owning the stadium is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, did I just... No, there we go. I think, because you sort of touched on it now, maybe we could just hear a little bit about what that's been like for you, watching the club's journey up through the leagues, having been there since the start and kind of being such an important part of that.
Yeah, very exciting. It's brilliant being a fan. I've been a fan since 1986, which is probably pretty small potatoes compared to a lot of the people in this room. I grew up in Yorkshire and in Hull, which is predominantly rugby league. We had 2 rugby league teams and only 1 football club, and nobody really followed Hull AFC, as they're called. We anybody that liked football went to Leeds because it was a short train ride away, and Leeds were doing particularly well back in those days. So coming down here and then starting to follow football with my partner and his friends, they were from Wimbledon. My first game was October 86. Jan Mulby scored. I was on the away end. And I was like, why aren't we supporting the local team since we live down here? We lived in Rains Park, so that was how that took off. But yeah, seeing the progression and how that's, it's just been phenomenal, absolutely amazing.
It's great to hear a bit about your journey coming down from Hull. And do you think that starting to follow the football club kind of made you feel a part of the community down here? Do you think that played a part in how you felt? Yes. Not being from here originally?
Absolutely, certainly did. And I can't wait to see Hull Kingston Rovers play the Broncos here. I never thought that was going to be happening in our stadium either, so there you go. I spoke very briefly last year at the International Women's Day when Chris Slavin recorded some of us, and I was sort of saying, and we will talk about this later on in this panel, but women have always been involved in all the different strands of this club, which is pretty good, and we've got a lot of younger ladies getting involved in the events and things that are going on. So yeah, it's really great to see. Really, really good to see.
Thanks, Lou. That kind of brings us up nicely to the present day, really. And I'll come to Michelle and just ask you, why did you want to stand for the Don's Trust Board?
It's quite funny now looking back. So I became treasurer of the trust in summer 2020. I had been a fan since '89, and I'd worked in finance about as long. And I saw but I'd always, my family had always encouraged giving and volunteering and supporting people in the community who, might need help. So that was in my blood. So when I saw the opportunity to volunteer as a treasurer, using my finance skills in football, it was just amazing. It's funny now where I am. I think back to that time. I just saw myself as being the treasurer. I wanted to be in board meetings, so I knew what was going on, but I was an observer. And in those sort of early few months, first year, I was so nervous about saying anything. I was just surrounded by all these people who seemed to know so much more, and I thought, oh God, I'm going to really embarrass myself. And then Edward Leake, who was on the board at the time, who's a great finance person, he was stepping down, and he said to me, Michelle, give it a go. You really should stand for the board. And I remember coming here, and I always get here early for events, and I was sat in a box on my own, waiting for the interviewing process that was going to be recorded, and all these awful questions, and I was probably the most terrified I've ever been in my life. And I sat there and I thought, I just want to go. I can't do this. It's not my thing at all. And I got through it, and people said I'd done all right, and I got elected. Hannah Kitcher, who's here at the back, the two of us are proud to say we're the only ones that have got over 1,000 votes in the elections, 2 women who've got the strongest votes, so really proud of that. And it's just evolved from there, and now I'm chairing the board. So it's just really weird, and I have to sit up here and chair Don's Trust member meetings, and it's just great. I love to learn, I love to develop, I feel supported by the people around me, and it's great. And Lou is absolutely right. There are loads of brilliant women over the years who've been involved with this club, and there are some here. Mags is here. Mags has done amazing things over the years to help the club. There are so many women who inspire us already in this club, and I'd just like to see more people, more women get involved. It's great fun.
Thanks very much, Michelle. I'd like to just maybe open this question up to the floor and also to the panellists. I think it is so inspiring to be here with 4 women who have such key roles here at AFC Wimbledon. But I think there is no denying that football does remain a male-dominated industry. So I'd just be quite keen to hear from the panel, from people in the floor, what your experiences have been maybe working, volunteering, or just being a fan of football. But also, on the flip side, what are some of the positives about being a woman working or volunteering in football? Maybe we'll come to Jennifer, because we haven't heard from you yet.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, it's an interesting one because so at the foundation I'm a volunteer, I'm chair of the board of trustees, and you could say I'm an outsider here. I've only been involved since 2021, and there are so many ideas of what football is and who it's for. And I think this club really shows how wrong many of those ideas are, those misconceptions that it's a really male-dominated, macho sport that is excluding for women. In the male matches that I've been to here, the men's football matches, I've never been made to feel more welcome in a football ground before. I was brought up with the Wolverhampton Wanderers, that's my dad's team. But the minute that I got involved with this amazing club, I was made to feel so welcome. And nobody ever said, you're not a fan. People would say, you're going to be a fan. And I was within a week, I think, of being involved. But it was just this incredible feeling that the warmth, alongside the passion of this place, which I think this stadium itself is a beacon for that. In the local area, this place just radiates confidence. It's the kind of place you want to be part of. And the passion of the people involved and how inclusive they are. People come from so many different walks of life here, and yet we all have one thing in common, and that's a belief that sport really matters, and that is sport for everybody. And women's voices are really loud within that. And one of my happiest times is actually at the women's matches, which are just fantastic. And the family-friendly feel of all that. This is a place unlike anywhere else, and it is truly inclusive.
That's so great to hear. I think what you were describing is kind of the real power of football at its best to kind of bring people together and feeling like you're really part of something special. So that's brilliant to hear. Does anyone else from the panel, or would anyone from the floor like to come in and join the discussion? Everyone's looking down. No, that's okay. Anyone online? Were there any online questions? We'll come to someone else. What about you, Sophia? As somebody who's employed by the club, have you faced any challenges over the last 2 years? Or has it all been sunshine and rainbows?
Of course not. No, it's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. But it's, I can only speak from my own perspective, obviously, and on the women's side. But we're in such a fantastic position right now where people are starting to pay attention to women's football. And we can certainly see that when we play here in our catchment area, the people that come in, that interact with us, that engage with us, both at the games and online. So, yeah, we're in a good position right now for growth. But no, it's not always sunshine and rainbows.
I mean, nothing ever is, I guess, right? We're always going to come up against challenges. But it sounds like here that overwhelmingly being a woman working or volunteering in football is a positive experience, which is really great to hear. I might just come back to Jennifer now, if that's... Oh, sorry, there's a question. Yay.
Sorry, Hannah. Perfect. So we've just had our first question, and on there it was about how you deal with it when it does come like a male-dominated environment, or you do appear to have some sexism that kind of confronts you. How do you deal with that? How do you take that? And what's kind of the next step? How do you react to it in that moment?
Yeah, please.
I suppose my take on that is I tend to look and think, I'm all right, and actually, if you've got a problem, it's probably you that's got the problem. So I tend to not rise to things like that and think maybe that person's having a bad time in their life and they're choosing to let it out and vent at me. But I try to rise above. And I appreciate, I'm actually very fortunate. I know there are some women who have had tougher experiences. I think of someone who was on the Don's Trust board and got quite a really rough time in quite a difficult period for us as a board, and wasn't able to continue. And that was really, really sad for me, because, you know, I think that, but she was a lot younger, and I think as you get older, you get more experienced and able to deal with people who can be challenging at times. So I just try and rise above it. I like to look at social media because I think that there are an awful lot of idiots on there, and I think they're idiots. I avoid going on there if it's after a game and we've played badly and lost. But otherwise, I'm quite fascinated about people's the way people think. So yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to say about that? Or
I can give you an example. I won't tell you which football club it was. I will probably remember. It was our first season, and we were playing away, and I'd arranged for the Wombulance. If you don't know what the Wombulance is, it was a very old ambulance that was painted yellow and blue. It had no what's it called? Steering? No, it had no steering. It had no steering. It had the turning circle of Carl Lieburn. It had no power steering, so it was a complete disaster. And anyway, it was bought by a fan, and I ended up having to drive this blooming thing. Anyway, we then eventually found somebody else who was able to drive it, and we used to sell lots of Don's Trust kit out the back of it, and programmes and all sorts. And people would order things and collect them at the next away game. Anyway, I'd arranged with this particular club that this was when I was ops director, and I rang them and said, right, no, I emailed. That was the whole point of me telling this story. I emailed and said that we'd be bringing this vehicle, and it would be, you know, is that all right? And everybody else has been very welcoming of us taking this to, you know, all over the place. And their club secretary got back to me and said, yes, it would be fine. Anyway, I turned up in a car with my mate Nicole, who can't be here tonight. She sent her apologies, ladies. This chap came steaming over to the car, who's obviously never met me, and he said, who the hell do you think you are parking your car here? And so I got out and I stood up, and I was considerably taller than him, and I just said, well, I'm actually the operations director of AFC Wimbledon. And he went, oh, I thought you were a bloke. Because I'm called Lou. So he assumed I was a bloke. And he then said, I never gave permission for that. He used a very disparaging word about the Wombulance, which we weren't very pleased about. Anyway, he thought that he was going to try and bully him. I said, well, if you ask us to take it away, I said, we just won't spend any money here. I said, I can easily tell our fans not to do that if you want. And he backed off. He was in the wrong. Even though he was in the wrong. Anyway, they sold out programmes in about 4 seconds flat, because they were no bigger than that. And it was like 3 pages of just crap. I'll tell you, you do remember who it was?
that's so interesting that he made that assumption based on your name.
Yeah.
But yeah, well done for.
Anyway, we bought one of their players eventually. He came to us.
Sweet
and
revenge.
funny enough, he was here on Saturday with his wife and his son.
Thank you. I want to just come to Jennifer now and just hear a little bit more about your association with the AFC Wimbledon Foundation. You said you started supporting the club in 2021, so not that long ago, and yet here you are, chair of the foundation. So tell us a bit about that.
The two things happened together. So I saw a job advert for the chair of trustees. And do you know, sometimes things just feel like they're meant to be. I don't know really why. I do actually. I was helping a colleague at my work because she wanted to take on a board or volunteer position. So I was looking on charity jobs. And I saw the chair of the AFC Wimbledon Foundation, and I thought, I'll hide that from her, because that's for me. I just had this feeling, you know, like it was meant to be. And I really believe in that. I lived at that point around the corner. I still live locally. And there was something about it. So I thought, well, I'll just put my hat in the ring. Because I really believe in the power of sport and how important that is, particularly in the lives of kids. And I knew from lots of my friends whose children were involved with the foundation how empowering that was. And not just the fact that there are so many sessions for kids to get involved with that are run through the foundation, but also that they are there as a constant. The foundation is there consistently. The way that we talk about the work that we do for women and girls is actually that it's sustainable, that it's actually a way of getting involved with sport and then having that change in your life always. For a teenage girl, it starts when you start doing sessions with the foundation, but then you can continue. There's pathways to keep having sport in your life. So I knew about that, and I just had this feeling. And so I went for the interview, and the warmth that came off that call, that interview call, was just brilliant. And then I found that every time, every interaction I had, I just thought, this is a really special place. Not perfect, of course, but really special. And so I work in the art world, and it's a charity world as well. And so I thought I could bring some skills, but maybe a bit of an outsider perspective as well. And so in my role at the foundation, I'm there to support and guide, together with an amazing board of fellow trustees, loads of whom are here tonight, who we give time as volunteers to help the foundation staff in the work that they do. So we've got specialist areas, and one of my areas is fundraising, which is so important, because the foundation actually engages 3,600 people every week. Every week. Yeah, isn't that amazing? I think it really is something for the club to be proud of, and that sustainability of it, that those programs continue. 3,600 people every week. And do you know the best bit for me? Half of those people are women and girls. 1,800 women and girls participate in foundation-led activities every single week. That's why I wanted to be part of this foundation.
That's pretty amazing statistics there. That's really, really impressive. And you kind of preempted my next question, actually, because you just touched on the fact that you work in the art world. So a question that I'm really interested to hear the answer to. I've spent most of my life working in theatre, and I'd just like to know if you think there's any parallels between football and the art world in terms of female leadership.
It's a really good question. So my day job, I run an art gallery in southeast London called Dulwich Picture Gallery. I think in terms of female leadership in the art world, there's a big difference between sport and art. And that is, in the 20th century, there wasn't a moment in the art world where women were banned from doing the thing that they wanted to do professionally. There wasn't 50 years when artists weren't allowed to make art. Whereas, isn't it astonishing to think that between 1921 and 1970, that women were banned by the Football Association from playing football? That is such a damaging statistic, and I think that is the thing that infiltrates so much of female leadership within not just football, but in sport. And so it puts women in sport on a back foot, the very fact that such a thing could happen. And that then when a team did go through and broke through and went and played in Mexico, when was that, 1971, went and played in Mexico, the UK press wrote about their looks and denigrated them and talked about them in such stupid ways, undermining the professionalism of a team who could play football to such a high quality. And yet when that team arrived in Mexico, they were legends. They were celebrated as heroes. So that is a damaging thing that has happened that we have to acknowledge and think about how to get over that. In the art world, there has been sexism. It is rife, and there is such a huge movement to just make sure that the substance is there, that you're not actually just championing a cause, that you're actually moving towards female leadership being just natural, just being something that isn't other, that you don't have to explain, it isn't something to make a fuss about, because it is just like breathing, that the best people for the jobs have the opportunities to get the jobs. And that's what we need, really, for football to catch up a bit on that. There's work to be done, but look at this room, look at the support from men and women in order to find that way. I think there's massive hope.
Yeah, that's really interesting that what you've said about 1971 and the women maybe being objectified slightly at the tournament. I think that's something that we have continued to see at international tournaments over the years, but I do think things are really moving in the right direction, and you four are obviously kind of proof of that. And yeah, it is great to see so many male allies in the room also this evening.
Yeah.
We had some good stats about the foundation, so I've got another couple of stats here. We all do love a football stat, but maybe not this one quite so much. So the first, which I guess we all know, is that there are no women managers in the English Premier League or the Football League, as far as I'm aware. And only 9% of board members are women. And when we talk about national federations, only 2% are presidents and CEOs are women. So when we think about that data, is there anything you think that AFC Wimbledon could do to increase their outreach to women locally, for the panel and for the floor? And does anyone have any thoughts in general on those stats about female managers or CEOs?
So I think I can say a couple of things as chair of the Dons Trust and also on the PLC board, the club board. First of all, the Dons Trust are really, really proud to sponsor the women's team. We give 40,000 a year to the women's team, their biggest sponsors, because we want to see the team do well and progress. And hopefully there's going to be a promotion this year. We're doing a big push to grow our memberships, and I hope that we can contribute as much as possible of that growth in memberships to the women. I'd really like to see that. I'd also obviously love to see the women play all their games here. We know it really helps attendances. It's a fabulous stadium, the atmosphere's great. It's a real challenge for us as a club. The pitch can only take so much, and we're not blessed with a wealthy owner that will pay for all sorts of wonderful enhancements to our pitch to make it super fit to cope with lots of play. So, you know, as a club, we aspire to have the women play more games here. It will really help grow the following. And, you know, I think for local people, it's a very different feel, isn't it, Sophia, at the women's games. My ex-husband actually brought his 7-year-old daughter to a game just recently. She absolutely loved it. And then she said, I want to come to one of the men's games. And he was a bit worried. He said, oh, you know, it's quite different. I'm not sure she's going to be okay. She was in the south stand, standing on her seat so she could see. And she went home to Mum and said, Mum, there weren't any swear words. And she had a fabulous time. So, I think the women's team is a big way forward for us to get more women involved, because there are much more, you know, there are many more families coming along. It's a different atmosphere. And if they like what they see, then they'll come again. So I absolutely support that.
Thanks, Michelle. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the stats that I gave, like the lack of female managers or females in very top senior leadership positions in football? Yes, question at the back or comment?
Yeah, no, she's dying now because I'm asking a question. So I am the mother of an AFC Wimbledon football fan and the wife of an AFC Wimbledon football fan, so have to be here by default. But my question is, one of the themes that seems to have come out of this evening is actually the women in front of us are in these roles having started in a volunteering capacity and then worked your way up to employment. And I guess the question is that the same for the men within this club, but then also outside of this club and wider into the industry? Because this club, I can appreciate, is a really special place, but the football industry has been going for quite a long time, and there's quite a lot of precedents to break, I guess. So is volunteering the way into these roles for everybody, or is that particularly just for women?
I think there's a stat that says that a woman will only apply for a job that she is like 110% sure that she could do, whereas a man would apply for a job that he's 75% sure that he could be able to do. So I think maybe volunteering helps people feel that they are like they can actually do these things. It certainly helped me. If I, in my role as literary agent, as I was before, would go and look at that job description, I'd probably go, well, I could possibly do some of those things, but I wouldn't be sure. But those years of volunteering for another fan-owned club, doing all of those different committees, certainly helped me feel like, well, actually this job is probably made for me. I've done all of those things that they've asked for. But yes, it's hopefully not the only routine for women ever, but it certainly was the routine for me.
Jennifer, did you want to come in?
Just because that really struck a chord with me of something that happened to me last night. So I'm a volunteer here, and I'll just continue to be a volunteer here. I'm not looking to have a job here. I'm doing it as a voluntary thing. But in my day job, I really clawed my way up the ladder in the art world to get a job now of running an art gallery. And I was giving a talk last night, and one of the questions at the end, a man who'd been in the audience said, "Oh, you know what? You shouldn't be paid for your job. You should pay to do what you do because you are so lucky. It's such a nice job. You're so lucky." And it really winded me. Everybody who knows me, I don't get winded that often. It really winded me because I thought you would not have said that to a man. And it was just a very strange, I think there still is an issue with professional women, and it's something that actually we have to catch it every time it happens. So last night, in fact, what I ended up doing was making it sound like I hadn't really understood him, because that couldn't possibly be what he meant. Because, you know, I've got a job that I deserve and that I worked hard for. And I think we're constantly having to just, redress that, because it's an imbalance. And then if we're enthusiastic about what we do, then we shouldn't be paid for it. It's a little bit like women playing football, isn't it? Having a day job and then playing football, but winning consistently and being absolutely excellent at it. But it's, they're lucky. They're lucky to play in a beautiful football stadium, and they're lucky to be able to show off that prowess almost as good as the men. So that it's something that's there that we have to be really honest about. And then I think as women, we just bring substance again and again, and we just show by doing. And one day, hopefully, things will genuinely change and we won't get questions like that again.
Thanks, Jennifer. I think in a couple of minutes, we'll just take a kind of 10 to 15 minute break so people can top up their drinks. But as we sort of come on to the topic of volunteering, I thought before we take the break, I just want to ask how you manage the volunteering alongside your other commitments, whether that's life or caring responsibilities or other work commitments. Maybe people would be interested to hear that, those that might want to volunteer.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a bit different, actually. I've worked in finance over the years. I'm a chartered accountant, worked in the city, and as I said before, I've always had this volunteering thing in me. And I'm now really fortunate that I'm at a time in my life where I don't need to work. I'm financially secure, which is great. So I can now give all of my time to volunteering. And I have a mental health charity in Ealing that I'm on the board of, that I give a lot of financial support in terms of skills to. But I probably spend between 3 and 4 days a week volunteering for the club and the associated charities. And actually, I don't know whether it's because I've got a recognised qualification and a skill. I haven't had that experience that Jenny's had. I've only ever had good interactions with men who valued my skills and appreciated me. I go back to when I was at Deloitte's a few years ago. It was quite a different world. And there was an awful lot of sexism, but I have not experienced that at all in this club, in any of the roles that I do, and the men have only ever supported me and encouraged me.
That's great to hear. Just finally then, maybe Sophia, because I think it sounds like before you did have quite a demanding full-time day job. So how did you balance volunteering at the football club with that? Was that challenging?
I mean, I think I'm going to have to be honest and say
Please
that I probably didn't balance that very well at all.
We love honesty.
The more I got into the volunteering at the football club, I probably chose to do that a lot over my day job. Not to say I didn't complete it, but I didn't put my all into my day job. So I just focused mainly it was quite clear to me at that point that my passion was in the football club, and and driving that forward and helping the women's team in particular. But I remember this one week in particular, and it was so our office went completely remote during COVID, and it was this 1 week where the football team that I was volunteering for and also played for made history in the FA Cup. No team at our low level had ever reached that far, and we'd been drawn away to Plymouth from London. We just didn't have the money to go there, so we had to fundraise, and it turned into a national news story. So I was on the BBC and The Independent and in The Guardian and did all of this, definitely during work hours, like 100%. But I was also working remote, so probably they didn't know. It's fine.
Amazing, thank you so much. Does anyone have any specific questions about volunteering, or we'll go to the tea/beer break? Oh, we've got a question here, yes.
Hello.
Hey.
Right, I love the women's team, right? I think they should play more games at Plough Lane straight away. Also, I'm a season ticket holder, and I try to think how you can get more money and people go and watch the women's team. Mick, can you not put extra money on season tickets for the men's, either an opt-in, opt-out, or something like that? So then it's like a joint season ticket where you can go and watch the men's, go and watch the women's.
Can I just answer a bit of that?
Okay.
So what I was talking about before, I'll let Mick answer in a second. On the, giving back to the women, one of the things that we're looking at is including Don's Trust membership within season tickets. There are an awful lot of season ticket holders who aren't members. And as I said before, we sponsor the women's team, and I want to see as much of that membership extra money from season tickets coming to Sophia and the team. Yeah.
Can I add to that though for a minute? Because to be honest, Craig, I think there's also the women's matches are amazing, and there are so many families in this local area, and so it's more about marketing rather than riding on the coattails of the men's team. I think it's more about getting the word out about how fantastic that experience is, and the foundation are there running the activities. Get there an hour earlier, get stuck in, enjoy the match, have a beer while you're watching the match. I think it's about getting that message out there.
Look at the difference between the attendances here and Carl Shorten.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Joint season ticket,
Yeah.
you'll go to Carl Shorten.
Well,
I don't know.
when we played the FA Cup fourth round against Charlton in the FA Cup, they're a championship side, and we actually chose to play that at Carshalton because it would fit us against such a very good team to play on a smaller pitch. We opened that up to men's season ticket holders to say you can come in for free with your season ticket. And I was on the gate and did all the gate takings. And there are men's season ticket holders who are also women's season ticket holders that already went on their women's season ticket. But of those who are not women's season ticket holders, I had 4. So that's opening up to all the men's season ticket holders, saying you can come down and watch AFC Wimbledon play a 4th round FA Cup game against a championship side, and 4 showed up.
Do you think that might be literally a logistics practical issue, or?
It definitely doesn't help when we're in a different borough altogether. We're not in our catchment area, and you can tell by the fact that we have about max 250 down at Carshalton, and we get 1,410 here the last time we played. Because everyone, if we market via the foundation, if we market via the men's newsletters and our own, our catchment area is here.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So travelling to a small ground at Carshalton that we have very little, it's not ours. We can't really provide what we can here. We're so lucky with the way that this stadium is built as well, that we can have a fan zone, that we can have food trucks in, that it's more of an occasion than just going to a football game, whereas when we go to Carshalton, they have their clubhouse, but it's all theirs. We can't run a match day in the same way that we can here.
Makes sense. Thank you. Okay, let's take just a 10-minute break, maybe. I didn't. Sorry. Oh my goodness. So sorry. So sorry.
I thought I got away with it. So how do I think about that question, Craig? So those of you that read my programme column will see my weekly effort at getting everyone to go to Carshalton or come in to watch the women's team here. I think I was in a meeting yesterday with the people who were putting the season tickets together, and I think that's a really interesting idea. So I think that needs to be fed in, actually. I think we should do that. The other thing about the women playing here, so this, everyone in this room put a lot of effort into putting this stadium here back in its community. And its community is not just the men's team and the people that want to come and follow the men's team. The community is everybody. And I think the women's team is going to be a big driver in helping us engage much more with all elements of the community. So has been difficult with the lack of natural light the pitch gets and the fact that we've done the London Broncos deal. So we haven't been able to get the women here as often as we would like. But I think ultimately in the future, that will happen. And I think the stadium will be full. We'll do fantastic marketing. We'll do what we can with season tickets and we'll make it happen. So I think it's absolutely key.
Love that positive ending. Thank you so much. Let's take a little break to grab a drink. So maybe just in 10 minutes, we'll be back here. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope everyone managed to get a drink and have a little break. So as we kind of come into the second half, I wanted to come to Lou, if that's okay, and just ask Lou, as someone who's been in and around the football club for over 20 years, what's your perspective on how football has changed for and towards women in the last 20 years, if you think that it has?
I think everybody would agree with me that yeah, it definitely has. The women's game has really increased. Most recently, success with the Lionesses, which has made a lot of people come to watch not just women's football, but men's football. And the foundation probably got a lot of interaction on the back of that as well.
Yep.
I mean, that, you know, proper grassroots football, starting at the very bottom in men's football and boys' football, girls' football, and then women's football. Yeah, huge, huge.
That's really interesting that you say that, because that was going to be my next question, which is, before the break, we heard a bit about female leadership in football and the women's professional game. But as you've said there, grassroots football is often people's first interaction with the game, which is why it's so important. So, Jennifer, at the foundation, what do you do to kind of encourage women and girls to engage at a grassroots level and to stop the drop-off that you sometimes see amongst teenage girls in particular?
Yeah, the drop-off is really distressing, and it's a challenging thing that is hard to address. The fact that teenage girls will stop engaging with sport altogether. And you know it with the teenagers that you know in your lives, how difficult it is to make sport something that isn't just a nice to have, but is actually just a natural part of a teenager's life. So at the foundation, our brilliant women and girls manager, Nicole, she works really hard at creating safe spaces in our after-school clubs, so that teenage girls who are playing football know that they can be in an environment where, for instance, it's girls only. So they know that they can actually just be their true selves. They don't have to worry about how they look or how they're perceived by the opposite sex, that it's a safe space for them. And that work is ongoing at the foundation, but I think that explains why the participation numbers have risen so highly. If you remember the stat I said earlier, we're talking about 1,800 women and girls getting involved in foundation activities, and that's every single week. So it's work that needs to continue doing, but I think it's also like the health benefits of sport are just something that we know. You know it. Sport is good for you. You know that. But actually really championing that as a part of an active lifestyle is just really important. I mean, in a basic level for a teenager, if you want to look good, play sport, is something that is just a really strong message, which is something that the foundation really champion in those safe spaces where girls can learn to play sport and they don't have to be elite. They just learn to have it as a part of their lives. If they have the talent, then they have those pathways to become elite through our help. But bottom line, it's about knowing that sport is something that is for you.
I couldn't agree more about the connection between sport, physical exercise, and mental health and well-being. And moving on from that, do you think it's harder for older women to find opportunities to get involved? And is that something that the foundation actively encourages as well, maybe with walking sports or something?
I love that. Thanks for asking that question. Yeah, so the foundation is for everybody from age 5 up to age 85, 95, why not? And it is something that we have the women's recreational football. Any women in the room tonight who haven't signed up for that, it's really fun. Maddie's championing it. It's just a really fun and a great way to get involved playing football every week. Why not? And just making sure that we've got all of these opportunities for all ages. So a big part of our work at the foundation is also aging well, so active lifestyles for the elderly. And our walking football sessions are absolutely brilliant. And it's a real community feel there as well. I think actually people come to those sessions first and foremost to beat loneliness, but then the secondary impact of it is that great effect on your mental health and your physical well-being by doing sport. And we've got our great five-a-side pitch here at the stadium, which is just such an asset. And it's brilliant to see those sessions taking place. So yeah, it's having those opportunities. And I think, again, you know, busy lives, people juggling home lives and professional lives, it's hard to fit fit sport in. So at the foundation, we're making sure we've got all those opportunities for women at all stages of their life, and actually for everybody at all stages of their life.
I think what you said earlier about it's not having it as a nice to have, but just really encouraging from such an early age all the way through to have exercise as a part of your lifestyle can only be a good thing. I'm just interested to know if many of the teenage girls or the older women, do they come to matches as well, would you say? Do you see a link there, or is that not something that you kind of actively monitor?
I think that's a stat that we need to get more information on, actually, because we do see familiar faces, but we haven't actually got the data on that, and we need to get it, because that's a really, really good point, and making that link. I mean, for us, we're doing a lot of work, so we work with 33 schools locally, making sure that what we're doing is really impactful, and then part of that message is also how welcoming this club is for the men's game and for the women's game. But what we need to get now is the stats on how much that actually is translating into those participants in the foundation's programs coming here. But I do know anecdotally that it is something that happens, absolutely, yes. And there's a great pride in the women's team. And that's also boys who participate in the foundation's football sessions, come and see the women's games and really enjoy it. I think there's a hand at the back.
Oh, hey, yes, lovely, a question.
I just wanted to echo the point around the women's rec stuff that is being championed by the foundation, like is the foundation. It's on tonight. I would normally be there, and it's absolutely fantastic. I probably was just born into an age of women, girls at school. Girls played netball, boys played football, girls did rounders, boys did cricket, and I always kind of I was taken to football games and I wanted to do football, but I was just never brought up around it, and I'm really happy to see that that is changing. But I'm in my 30s, and the opportunity to be able to just be a beginner at football now, it wasn't really there until the women's rec through the foundation, and I'm just so grateful for being able to just hang out with people of a similar age, mentality, and just be able to kind of just have a bit of fun and not be scared. I'm sort of having to overcome the kind of fear of being in a team sport and being a woman and all the kind of anxiety that's associated with PE from an early age, but I'm just, it's kind of overcoming that, and I'm just absolutely so grateful that it exists. And if there could be 5 more 5-a-side pitches here, that would be amazing, just because it's growing massively, and I think that's an effect of the sex of the women's teams nationally, and we're just really struggling to just we're struggling to be able to access those. So basically it's expanding, and it's really exciting, and I'm really grateful and really happy about that.
Thanks so much for sharing that. It's really wonderful to hear, and I just resonated so much because I started going to football in the 90s, but I've virtually never kicked a football in my life, because similarly at my school, girls played netball, hockey, and I still haven't crossed over into daring to play football. So yeah, that's really great to hear.
You know where to come. Wednesday night here.
So we heard a bit from Lou about how football has maybe changed for and towards women over the last 20 years. And I think something that has definitely changed was just coming in the 90s, in the late 90s, is obviously social media. It's such a big topic of conversation, the positives and the negatives that it has. So I would be really interested to hear a bit from the panelists or the floor on people's thoughts about the relationship of social media to fandom. And of course, we're all aware of the negatives. I'm not saying don't bring up the negatives, but I would love to hear if anyone has any positives. So for me, for example, I do love it on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, when you're watching a game, there's loads of drama, and suddenly everyone is sharing that, and you're sharing it with a load of people that you don't know, and it just feels like football can be really special and bring people together. So does anyone have any thoughts? Yes, Lou.
I was thinking could really go into the negatives, but I don't really want to do that now.
Don't feel like you can't, obviously.
Well, I can do, but I think I'd rather look at the positives. And recently, one of the things is I've witnessed on there, on Twitter, X, Facebook, whatever, Whoop, all the different forms. I don't know what else there is, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever. Is a great way to get emergencies resolved at the club. So when we've been told that there's going to be really bad weather coming ahead and we've got a home game, various people will go out and put out a request, is there anybody locally who can come down and help us put covers on the pitch? And it's always happened. People have always pitched up from all over the place. People we don't even know turn up and help do these sort of roles. And that's because of social media. Another one that I thought about was literally Lee Willett put something out at the weekend. He's the guy that's in charge of those fabulous flags that you see around the stadium, which get put up and taken down for various matches. And again, he asked for volunteers, and it's people that you've never even heard of who are going, yeah, I can help you take them down. It's on, last night, Tuesday night. They're not going to get home till a lot later if you're going to stay and pack them all up, because they all get packed up into boxes and looked after for the next time they get brought out. So that's two really nice positives, which is great for the club and great for all it. And again, volunteers, once you've got them in, you've got them.
That's great. Thanks so much, Lou. Michelle?
I can just think of one really good one after the amazing game recently here. If any of you haven't seen it, please do look at John Green's video about the whole day. And I think, we are always actively looking for small investors in the club, people who care about being fan-owned and the community and everything that goes with that. We don't want a big American private equity fund buying us, but we are, always hopeful that we will find people who connect in the really positive way with us. And somebody actually said the other day from our finance committee, that video is absolutely what you want to show people about what this club is all about. And if you get it from that, then you'll be in. Nick Robertson, who's on the PLC board, who is one of the founders of ASOS. He lives in Wimbledon Village. He owns 10% of the shares in the club. But he wanted to be part of it. He wanted to help a local organisation. He's a Chelsea season ticket holder as well, and I think day by day he just drifts away and gets more and more sucked into this club and everything that's about it. And I think, him being on the board, he's got some great experience and skills to add, but people like that can really make a difference. And so, the power of social media then to tell some really powerful stories, I think, is amazing. And I'm sure our new MD coming in next Monday, who comes from Crystal Palace with a marketing and comms background, James Woodruff, I'm sure he's got some really interesting ideas about how we can sell our amazing story wider for the benefit of the club. So I'm really excited to see what he will have to do.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, we'll come to Maddie, thank you, and Jane.
I just wanted to relay two stories, actually. One of them was when we launched WOWSA. So WOWSA launched on the 18th of March last year, and we were thinking about it from about January that year. And we were aware that launching a women's supporters association would trigger a few people and it would cause a few problems for them. And so we held the comms really closely, and I just want to raise hats to Esther, who's our comms manager, who did a fantastic job in preparing all the comms before we launched. So we knew that there would be a backlash, and we handled the comms really carefully, and we worked really closely with the club. And so thanks to Chris Lovin and to Chris Thorpe, who helped promote all as we launched at that time. And as predicted, we launched on Twitter, X, and immediately there were a whole load of why do women need a supporters club? This is a man's football club. It's about 3 points on the pitch, blah, blah, blah. And Esther, we've got a little WhatsApp group, and we were tweeting each other and WhatsApping and saying, God, what do we do? This is a bit of a nightmare. And Esther said, step back, leave it, let's see what happens. And within 30 minutes, we had about, 10, 20 male allies who literally stepped in and said, what is your problem? It's women supporting women. And it just showed me that actually, I get emotional, sorry. It just showed me that actually we've got a whole load of men out there who support what we're doing and support the club and support the women's football. And actually when needed, they step up. And it's so fantastic to see so many men in the room tonight. Thank you for coming. And then the other one is a similar story, but in real life. So we were having a really bad run of form. For those of you that don't know me, I was on the board for several years. And we had a particular game where it got really quite nasty with fans abusing other fans. And I took quite a lot of personal abuse outside the stadium. I didn't feel safe coming to games for a while, and that's really not a good place to be. I came back to a game and we lost, and I said to my husband, we need to leave now because I can't have this. And a male fan who I don't know particularly well sat behind me and said, you can't be like this. This is not acceptable. I will make sure you get in and out safely. And it was a male ally that stood up and did that. Thank you. And I just want to say that actually having those male allies is really, really important to us. So thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Oh, we've got another question here. Great, thank you.
I think my question is, what would you advise men to do, say, to be good allies?
A bit like blind date, that question's number one. Well, I'll have a go at answering it. Yeah. Keep on doing what you're doing. Pick the gentlemen that are here in this room tonight. It's fantastic. There's 16 people that are male and 18, including these two gentlemen here, who would have been here anyway, wouldn't you? Yeah, just keep on doing what we're doing. We're not being exclusive, we're inclusive. Male football club's inclusive, otherwise we wouldn't have been part of it and been involved with it. I think, WOWSA can do more things to help bring in more women that want, we talked about it very briefly before this meeting. If somebody, a female, wants to join and come along to a football match, or even a male, and they want to meet somebody and be, shown around or whatever, that's exactly the sort of thing they can be doing. And that all goes on the back of, her game too, and women at the game, which was set up by a long deceased friend of mine now, who I worked with at Supporters Direct many years ago. And that Women at the Game has been doing so well, so well. And that really does reach out into the community and getting people of all different faiths, creeds, colours, feeling safe, coming along and enjoying it. Many of whom have carried coming back, which, Jane, you were heavily involved in that, weren't you?
Happening 16th of March this year.
Thanks, Lou. Was there another comment or question?
Yes, so on the comment of obviously social media, obviously when you are quite young, social media, they've grown up with it, they've not seen a different world to social media, and a lot of the time you do see quite negative reactions, especially if you see a woman kind of angry at the game or something's gone wrong. There's always someone filming it, posting it on Twitter and saying, look at this girl, whose missus is that, stuff like that. You do see that a lot. And we've just got a message from Vicky Harrison just asking, you regularly see the friendship groups of boys at games who make a day of coming to Plough Lane, but you very rarely find a group of younger girls. How can we attract more girls to come to football and want to bring their friends? And I think Siobhan's got the answer.
I just wanted to say the thing that I found the most enchanting about coming to watch a women's game here was the number of groups of young teenage girls who were having a great afternoon, who were all together, all having a drink or a burger, all watching the match, all feeling like it was their place. They weren't frightened or intimidated. It was just a kind of lovely way to spend a Sunday afternoon with their friends. And that's what I went away with from that particular day, those girls that I watched.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Thanks, Siobhan. What do you think? The question, Maddie, was how could we get more girls at groups at men's matches? Is that what the
Yeah,
question
definitely.
was?
But I think, Siobhan, you're definitely onto something. If we can get them to the women's game with all their friends feeling comfortable, maybe it's then just a transition of how can we celebrate a day. Say, for example, when we have our next home game and we do women at the game, we then kind of say to the younger audiences, look, bring your friends along, come in a little group, we can make it entertainment.
Can I just chip in there?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was just wanting to draw the parallels between the two because I thought that was the question, not to detract from that, obviously.
I would just say from personal experience, I have come for quite a long time as a woman on my own to the game. I don't come with a man, a partner, I come on my own. And I have never felt uncomfortable. And I think that what happened to Jane was terrible, but it's a really isolated incident. And I think that, I would encourage any young girl, woman to come along on their own or in a group. We're a really family-friendly atmosphere. There's very rarely any trouble. We get some noisy, feisty people in the South Stand, but it's passion and they love the club and they care. But there's very rarely any trouble. So I would absolutely spread the word. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have a good group of female friends I've been coming with for the last 20 years. And got involved, 20 years. But got involved with the club volunteering, and it goes back to that volunteering role, but that's how I got to know everyone, got to know the girls that I come to football with week in, week out, and I would recommend any young fan to get involved with the volunteering and meet people that way. We have the Wombells, female supporters, that's the sponsorship that we do on an annual basis, where you can wear pink, drink pink, eat pink. Pink is very much the theme. It's very tongue-in-cheek, but we'd recommend you come to that. Also, any female fans that haven't been to a game before or don't have a female group of friends, get in contact with WOWSA. Come and we will meet you, be a friendly face, and be that group of women to support you, come to games with. And we've got Notts County away game coming up. If you've not been to an away game before, come with us to that game and be with a bunch of like-minded female fans. Drunks.
Thank you.
Another question just over here. So circling back to the group of girls, I go home and away with my dad every week, but I also have a group of friends, and sometimes we get unwanted attention from some of the boys, and it sometimes makes us change our behaviours. For example, I wouldn't wear a crop top to a game because I know it would attract some of the boys. Have any of you ever had an incident where you felt you've had to alter your behaviour to not have any unwanted attention?
That's a great question, and I'm really sorry that you feel that you have to modify your behaviour in that way. But yeah, does anyone want to?
I've certainly had or heard, and not just here but everywhere in football, whenever you are sharing your passion and your opinions about football, that they're not as valid as a man's point because this is a man's game. And we also have chants that, or whenever someone is messing up on a pitch, they're acting like a girl, right? Which has certainly in some cases, weirdly, always ever at away games or when I'm at a crowd that I don't know, act differently. I'm not us, much of a passionate fan or as vocal with my opinions, because I don't want to get anyone telling me that I'm wrong or that I don't belong there. So yes, hasn't happened here for me, but certainly has happened.
Anyone else want to come in?
I can echo exactly what Sophia has just said, but it was more when we were Wimbledon FC, not AFC Wimbledon. I'm pretty sure it does happen here, and nobody said it to me. One of the things I did back in, it would be, 94, 95 season, I had a very famous Wimbledon supporter, Roy Capel, used to sit behind me and burnt cigarette holes in all the back of my jacket, so I had to wear the same jacket every week to the home games. God bless you, Roy. And they were like, what do you know about football? Oh, it's offside. What do you know about football? I thought, well, I'll teach them. And so I went and became a qualified referee. And 6 weeks later, they said something came up in conversation, and I just went, oh, here you go. Surrey County FA, have some of that. And it's like, I'm too much of a gobshite. I have to front it out. I can't be dealing with it. If I heard that being said around that group of girls, anything that was like that, I would be incensed. But I am obviously a lot older, and I've got a few more miles on the clock, and I'm a bit more of a mouse. I would have to say something, and then I think other people would probably get involved, male and female. It wouldn't have to be just having women around there saying that's inappropriate. Everyone knows what's inappropriate. But, maybe a crop top to football. On a hot summer's day, that's quite a nice idea. But you should be allowed to wear it if you want to, and not feel that you're being persecuted for being a nice young lady.
Thank you. I'm too old to wear a crop top, and so is Lou.
I've got the crop top on now.
I was just going to say there was a question earlier about how men can, and I think that is a fantastic example of when men are the best allies, is when they're actually policing themselves. And so if anyone who's watching this or can listen to it, if you're hearing men act inappropriately, call it out, because they will listen to you more than they will listen to a woman, unfortunately. And that's where you can lead by example, I think.
Can I just add to that, because language is so important, isn't it? And it's all of us here just sort of feeling really comfortable in this space, that we have a voice that we can use. But there's also something that I would really advocate for, which is a change that we can all make, which is never again to talk about women's football and football. It's men's football and women's football. And if we all make that adjustment every time we talk about men's football, I think it can just have a really strong impact if we just hold ourselves to account to just keep doing that. Because you do it in tennis, so why do we have some sort of default setting that football is real football and then there's women's football? Let's stop doing that. Let's talk about men's football and women's football. Same as we do men's and women's tennis.
So the first one's just, from myself, selfishly. So following on from Rachel's point, when you are a young person and you do experience discrimination or sexism, and you've had to go through that and you felt the anxiety, and you've kind of felt that unease, and you know that that's your safe place and it's now almost been exploited or taken away from you. How do you come back from that, or what's the next step for a young person to feel safe in that environment again?
Can I give you an example? And this is going back quite a few years now. I think I'm a bit feisty like Lou. I lived in Shepherd's Bush, and I was walking home from Hammersmith Tube quite late in the evening on my own. And I was walking along, and this guy flashed himself at me, and I was so proud of myself, because do you know what I did? I just laughed. I couldn't see how big it was that he was showing, but I just laughed, and he was so quick to cover up and run away, and it was the best thing I did. And sometimes you just have to, as a woman, you have to have some balls and front it and stand up for yourself. And it's not always easy, don't get me wrong, and and I was lucky on that occasion. It could have been far, far worse. But you should be proud of yourself, who you are, and don't ever let anyone else put you down.
Can I just ask about supporter liaison officers at the club? Because was there not a text number you could message them on? Was that going to happen, or is that a Yeah. So that really, maybe we need to highlight that more on social media, because that's what everybody looks at, and in the programme, etc. And, you know, so that if it's a group of, it could be a group of lads who feel they're being persecuted by somebody at away games or even at home games, whatever, they should be able to report it quite quickly. I mean, Paul, I think are you still a supporters liaison officer?
Yeah, that's not Tim.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, Tim.
But the abuse line doesn't come to us, it goes directly.
I'll let John Stanley, club secretary, answer this one.
Yeah, just to echo exactly what Paul said, we do have a telephone number which you can text, you can call, and it goes straight through to our control room. And you basically give details, seat details, whatever description you can give, and it's dealt with promptly.
What's the number?
It's in the programme, it's on the website, it's in the match day guide. Yes, thank you, Paul.
Sorry, I didn't hear that one.
Can you use the mic, because we can't hear you?
So currently it's not on the...
But it's not currently. Have they? Okay. But they were.
They've recently gone up around the ground. So now there is an abuse number around the ground in case you do need to text anyone about any abuse that's going on. I think that's the page we've reached. Yeah? Perfect. And we also have our supporters liaison officer, Tim, in the room, and Paul. So if anyone does need any help, you always have two on site. And obviously any foundation members that are working, any staff that are working, come and find us. We will ensure that it gets dealt with professionally and correctly.
Can I ask that we actually have an article about that in the programme, just really pushing it again, and then having it on the website maybe? Just to, I mean, I don't know what the number is. I've probably forgotten that we had to have an abuse hotline.
I would really encourage people to report in the moment, because it gives the security a chance to deal with it there and then and investigate as well. I really do encourage there in the moment.
Sorry, and just to add very quickly, I do think that there could be more done to really promote this, not just in the programmes, but like really strong articles on our website, through our social media. I think it's fantastic that that is there and people can do it, but it's not visible enough around the club, even though it's improving. So I think we could make a few strides there.
Can I just ask, I don't know who to ask really, but how many incidents do we get in a game where people report, you know, antisocial behaviour, or whether it's racism, sexism, or whatever?
I was going to say, if that is directed towards me looking for an answer, I'm not sure. I know it's minimal. It is minimal. Any instances we do get, so we have had a few. I've been here about 2.5 years now, and I can recount maybe about 4 or 5 over that period of time. They've been dealt with where we've been given the information on the day. They've been dealt with on the day. Some have led to arrests. Some have led to football bans. So it is something we take very, very seriously. There are obviously some times where it does become tricky.
On a positive note, one of my best friends, you know, we've been season ticket holders for 2 or 3 years, and his daughter's been coming for this season. She's 19, I think now. She's had no hassle. She really enjoys it, and even when we can't go, she will come to a game here on her own. And even when her dad couldn't go to an away game, which we were all going to go to, I went with her and she and some other people, and she had a lovely time. So I hope that that's a sign that things are progressing.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you.
Hiya, as one of the volunteers at Women's Games on match day, and we've talked a lot about volunteering today, just to say that if anyone does want to be a volunteer at Women's Games, or even just come along and observe to see what we do, we're always welcome them along. So just to say, there's always stuff to do, and it's a really great occasion.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mine was just a quick comment on the contact number. Maybe it could be put on the back of all sold tickets and a season ticket. And then maybe notify people to say, this is wait and find the number. If you forget, you'll remember your season ticket.
No? Hiya. This is obviously a really important topic, so my question's moving on from that. Are we all ready to move on, or are we? Yeah? No, perfect. So my question's to Hannah and Sophia. I've been asked to mentor a young female professional in football and help her find full-time employment. So obviously some of the challenges I've faced are different to what she's going to face. So I'd like to know from you two what bits of advice I can give her.
I don't know, it depends on what she wants to do. Like, the work is still going to be the same, right? Whether you're a man or a woman, she's going to face different difficulties that you're never going to be able to mentor her on anyway, because you've never lived those experiences. So just focus on the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm here if you need any assistance.
Yeah, I think similar. Just my experience of getting a job in football also began with building a relationship with the Football Supporters Association, who I now work for, and doing volunteering in the sense of events and things. So yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of focus on the work that she's interested in and supporting her as much as you can. And again, volunteering, it's not always an option for everyone depending on the life that you have, I think. But do you think it's a great way to start making connections in football?
Actually, just saying about volunteering being the way, it seems to have been the way for women to get involved in this club and girls to get involved in this club. Maybe we should be promoting WOWSA as much as we can, because I was a member of Wimbledon Independent Supporters Association. That's how I got to know most of the people I know in this room, was through that. It wasn't anything to do with the club or volunteering. It was an independent supporters association. So WOWSA could, that could definitely be a stepping stone for people to be getting involved.
Great, thank you, Lou. Have a question?
Hi, yeah, it's just further on to what the lady over there was saying about self-managing and stuff like that. I've been going football for years and years, and it's funny, I'm just looking on the table here of Anna and Esther. I used to go football quite a lot when I was younger. It's surprising to make sure it's just water, Anna, and not. But we used to self-police within that as well. Many times we get on the train and Anna and Esther and I had to have their own drink and stuff, but we could mix quite happily with that. So I think I bring my son to the women's games here. Absolutely love it. I find it a pure football in terms of there's not the time wasting, the whole stuff around that. He loves the environment, and I want him to see the beautiful game that way before he comes on to the men's when it's a bit too much. What I was going to say, part of my role is I do the stadium tours here, and I've been really impressed and encouraged by the amount of families that come. When in our relegation season, it was quite funny. We got loads of people who wanted to come to a tour, were getting season tickets, and it was because of the family zone. They could bring their children, the girls and that, and really enjoy it. But some of the best tours I've had recently, we had the under-11s girls team who were playing a certain team that we beat here on Saturday. And they wanted to understand the history. And it was really refreshing to see their excitement on that. I also, we did a tour with Hannah Bingham, who's a women's captain. it's interesting because I got some grief from some of my friends about why are you doing the tours with the women's, and that's sort of, I'm big enough and ugly enough to call it out, and I'd tell them to go and do one. But it's really interesting. But as a person, I self-police it and just say, look, if you've got nothing good to say, just don't say anything. But one thing I noticed when I bought Hannah Billingham is it got a totally different crowd, and she was their hero. It was a great thing to see. So I think it's really important that we as a club continue to embrace that.
So I think that opened up into a really kind of organic and natural discussion, and it was really great to hear from everyone. I just want to ask if anybody has any final questions. Then I'm just going to pose one final question to each of the panelists for a bit of a quick fire answer before we start to wrap up. But I just wanted to ask if anyone else has anything that they want to ask or say, either online, I'm looking up again, or in the room before we do that.
I was just wondering if the club does have a clearly articulated goal for where they want the women's team to be in 5 years. Where do they want women to be involved internally in positions of power within 5-10 years? Do you have a strategic plan in place for these things?
Anyone want to come in?
I don't think we have, in terms of the women's team. Obviously, we have an ambition, as I mentioned before, to try and increase the number of games that they play here. And certainly in terms of the Don's Trust sponsorship, we want to grow that year on year. In terms of involving more women, there is another Michelle now, who is spelt the same way as me, confusingly, who's just gone away from the room, but she'll come back in and I'll point her out in a minute, who we've just appointed as a non-exec director of the PLC board. So it'd be lovely for me to have another woman alongside me. She was HR director at West Ham for over 10 years. And has done quite a lot of work on ED&I as well. So I'm really excited. I think we all are. Mick will, I'm sure, agree. We're all really excited to bring her on board and help improve and promote best practice in terms of HR generally, ED&I, and I'm sure that will also help. She will also help us encourage more women to get involved. So I'm really happy about that.
Thanks, Michelle. Sophia, anything you want to add?
I think we probably don't have a clear, this is where we want to be in 5 years, because it also so much depends on the growth of women's football overall. I think we just want to continue to punch above our weight, which is what we're doing right now. Most of the teams in our league, even in our league, have a bigger budget than us. But we're still...
And you're top of the league
right now.
Yes, we are. And do you think that the success of the Lionesses in recent years has had a direct impact on the team and how many people are coming to watch the women's team? I know we discussed quite a bit earlier about the crowds and playing in a different location, but what do you think about that?
I think definitely on our crowds. On the playing side, not so much for us. These players have been playing for such a long time now, but they don't necessarily correlate, because if these girls who play football all of a sudden because they're Lionesses, they can't come to our games because we play when they play. But we certainly have got further interest from young girls, young boys and their families, and we're seeing more and more people who are season ticket holders or people who come regularly to the men's game come to our games as well, and that's just increased visibility.
Women and girls' participation in foundation-led activities has increased by 226% since the Women's World Cup. There's a stat for you.
Just to add into that, tonight, the session that I run, so I run a session for our young girls tonight. This time last year, we had one child at this girls' session, one 13-year-old girl. Tonight, I ran the exact same session with 25 girls. 25 on our AstroTurf. It's phenomenal the increase we've made in such little time. And I think Mick wants to...
Yeah, just because I think you were looking at me when you asked the question. So a couple of things. So I think the first thing to say is, as an organisation, now we are back in Plough Lane. We've been here for 3 years with fans. I think there is a bit of a need to actually, for all of us, to sort of say, right, where are we going next? And that's for teams that feature men and for teams that feature women. So that will be something that's going to be getting underway in the next few weeks. I think in terms of your really good question about what's the plan for women in leading the club, if I think back to 2002 and Wimbledon Community Centre, probably Lou may have been the chief woman, I'm not quite sure. But if I look back to that room when we actually had a blank piece of paper and an idea for a football club, Ivor will remember this as well. There were so many women in the room, it really didn't look like a men's football club, even at that point in time. And since then, we have just had amazing women who've driven the whole thing with the men. And I won't say the names, I don't want to miss anybody out, but around this room there are people who just made such a contribution. And you can see it on this table with the chair of the Don's Trust, the chair of the foundation. That's my boss up there. And she's pretty demanding. So, so this is all about where we're going to go next. We want to play in packed stadiums, men and women, at Plough Lane, and go as high as we can in the football pyramid and do amazing work in the community. And that will underpin whatever strategy we come up with. But that's how I'd answer your question.
Thank you. We'll just take one final question and then we'll go to our last question for the panellists.
Sorry, just a question. I was having a brief chat with Sophia in the break. There are very few women coaches, managers, etc. Is there a way that can be improved? Because, I asked Sophia, our own women's manager is a male. I mean, I know the manager of Arsenal is a male. I mean, we all know the Chelsea manager, she's fantastic. But there are very few of them. Is there any pathway? Is there anything we can do as a club to try to get people, as well as getting people on the board, etc., etc.? What about football coaches to progress? And I did mention a lady, I'm sure some of you will know, Lucy Ward, who she's a brilliant summariser, commentator on all the main sports broadcasters, and she used to work with the men at Leeds. Someone like her, is it worth contacting and saying, look, how can we get women in coaching? As I say, forget about the board and stuff, and I'm not denigrating that at all. I'm just saying, as grassroots football, I mean, I think it was Spain or Italy had a female manager of one of their clubs briefly in the last year or two, one of the male clubs. What can we do to try to help that progress?
I mean, I can just maybe pick up of where we left off in terms of recruiting female coaches. There are very few in general. There are a lot of, and it comes back to my point about who applies for jobs, someone who is 110% sure they can do it, or someone who is 75. I said 75, someone else said 40% over here. So there's a lot of men who think they can coach, and some of them are really, really good. There's a lot of women who probably would be interested in coaching, but have a fear of putting themselves in that position. There are certainly things that we can do to encourage that and hopefully get them through our own girls' pathway. and growth, maybe from ex-players or something, but it's kind of a societal thing.
Thanks, Sophia. So we are going to take the last question now, which was from this just down here. Yeah.
I was just going to back onto that point. So with the foundation, one route that we have to try and encourage more female coaches is we will give them a mentor if they want to get involved, or we put them on our Don's intern program. Essentially, we then build them up hours of shadowing someone, helping at sessions, helping on match days, being involved with the family zone. And once they've built up a certain amount of hours, we then pay for them to do their level 1. Once they've got their level 1, they're then entitled to coach with us. Or, if they wish, go to another club and coach. But we've grown them through us, so they tend to stay with us because they know they'll be looked after, they'll be nurtured, and they'll be mentored further. So that's one way we encourage them, and we also have the pathway of how to go through the girls' system. So you start all the way from 4 and all the way through to the women's team with Sophia. And again, if you find yourself starting to drop off, we know you have your passion and love for football. We know you want to be involved. So what other pathways can we give you? And we're currently looking into how can we start to direct them into things like media? How can we direct them to behind the scenes? How can we show them how to get onto the board, or what volunteering actions might you require to become a treasurer? So just showing them pathways, that they do have them potentials, that there are people with stories that might not have come from a direct route, but you can get there as long as you've got the right club, the right morals, the right vision, and the right values. We will take you on, we will bring you in like family, and we will coach you and guide you until you are a coach and ready to go.
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm also a board member of AFC Wimbledon Foundation. And I just wanted to say that there are 4 women here tonight. We're all on the board of the foundation. And I think it's everything that Maddie's just said. She's just kind of said it for me. 5. She's just said it for me. And it is also that point you've made about strategy. You do have to think about what your aims are, what your goals are. And it's by no coincidence that the figures that Jenny's quoted tonight are there and they're real. And I just wanted to reflect on the fact, I think this has been a really important space this evening for us to talk about the women's game. And thank you very much, WOWSA, we're all members, but thank you so much for organising this. Let's do it again, because this is a conversation that has to keep happening. I think, Maddie, you've been a great example for us, for the foundation, to promote our ethos. And thank you so much.
Hello, again. Speaking about Maddie, women's football, men's football, this lady here, or woman here, sorry, is an absolute credit to this football club. Don't worry about women's, don't worry about men's, to this football club as a whole. And if this football club was full of Maddies, we'd be going a long, 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 long way.
Yes, I think we need to wrap up now. Yes, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for being so part of the conversation. And thank you especially to the fantastic panellists. Yeah, I'll just hand over to Jane, who is going to say a few things.
I just want to say, I'll try not to cry, I promise. I just want to say thank you to you all for coming. This is the first time we've run something like this. We had no idea how many people would be in the room and online, and we're really pleased with the turnout. On all of the tables, there is one of these. If you're not a member of WOWSA yet and you'd like to join us, please do, what's it called, Esther? Scan the QR code and join WOWSA. it's £5 a year, and we hope you think it's good value for money. You get a nice shiny badge. I'd really like to thank all of the ladies on the panel tonight and Hannah from the Football Supporters Association for coming and joining us. I hope you found it really insightful. I think some of the things they've said have been absolutely fantastic and really inspiring, which is what we were hoping for. Thanks to Stu and George for all the tech and the help, and for the club for helping us put this on tonight. Thanks to Siobhan for coming down and doing an intro for us. We really appreciate that. And then just a couple of kind of parish notices. So WOWSA, as Kerry said, we're hosting an away trip to Notts County on Saturday. For any women or anybody who hasn't been to an away game before and wants to come in a safe environment, please come and speak to me afterwards. We'll give you a link so you can book a ticket, and we're all sitting together, and we'll give you details of the away pub we're going to, and timings of trains and things like that. Some of the things that we've talked about tonight, we've worked really closely with the club on to improve for women. I just wanted to touch on a couple of those. So things like the men's toilet doors in the south stand weren't self-closing. And so it was quite an interesting experience walking along the south stand if the men's doors were open. That's been sorted out now. Abuse posters that we talked about, they have all been put up this week, so they should be in all the ladies' toilets, and they should be around the stadium. The number is there, and the poster goes into every match day programme. We spoke to the club about some of the PR and the comms that happens, and about increasing the number of women that appears in photographs, and actually diversity across the board, and that has improved in the last few weeks. And the stewards are really, really friendly, so do speak to them if you have a problem. More baby changing units are coming next season, we're told, so and there'll be better signage for them. There are actually quite a number in the stadium, but people were having problems finding them, so there are more coming. And then I mentioned earlier, we've got the Women at the Game event, which the Foundation are hosting on the 16th of March. We're looking for some volunteers to help introduce new women to the game that have never been to a game before. So if you think you're around on the 16th of March between 1 and 3 and can help, come and speak to either Maddie or myself. And then we just want to promote all the women's games that are coming up. They're top of the league. There's only one club that gets promoted out of that league. We have a damn good chance of doing it this year. So please do come and support the women's teams. On the WOWSA.uk, website, we've got a link to all of their upcoming games and when they are, and I think it's dead cheap to get in, £5 to get in. So do come and support them. And finally, thank you. Thank you all for your engagement tonight. It's been really, really helpful. Thank you.